Live streaming is on.
Here. Oh, and we have. All right. So I have. Well, if we go into here, since after last week's meeting, I discussed with Robert in the evening, like a problem he brought up. Robert created a PR here that was kind of changing it a bit. So this requirement here, instead of having these unit directories be kind of fully independent, he proposed to add one exception for variant attributes, where those could still refer to files outside or the other way around. The kind of motivation for that came from definitions like these, where you might have a standard graph vis definition, which is defined with.
But I think our discussion was a lot about this particular expression and problem behind that. But I think it's more important to consider the motivation for removing the restrictions, which is that it's not going to be obvious to contributors whether or not they can use the new directory structure. And the other problem is that in some cases, you might have to go back and forth between putting the package in a unit directory or not putting it in a unit directory because we have certain restrictions. Lifting those restrictions will make it clear that almost anyone can put their package in a unit directory and will be able to keep it there despite the sort of maintenance things that tend to come up over time.
Yeah, and I think the kind of main thing that kind of made it click for me was that people might write a definition like this, or like a normal definition without arguments here first, but later they do need arguments here, like when they need a different Python version or a different version of something else. And then if we had this restriction that kind of, as it was previously, where you can't set an argument here, then you'd be kind of forced to move this back to the all packages.next file, even though you already had the unit directory. And this is kind of bad. So we came to, he originally proposed this PR, but then we discussed it a bit further and we came to the kind of idea that perhaps we should just have an args.next file, where the args.next file allows you to specify the argument in the call package call. And that way, there shouldn't be any problems like that anymore, like the one before. Yes.
I don't know if I understand the args file.
What, Alex?
Well, yeah, I guess I'm reading that for a second. I'm trying to understand the difference between the args file and a default.nix.
So args would, well, actually, I'm not sure if I wrote an example here.
Is there a link to this anywhere?
Yes, this is number 28. Well, I guess it's, or
is it closer?
Here, 27 and 28, I think.
Oh, PR. I was looking at it.
And I did also commit the meeting notes we took last week while talking with Robert. So a lot of the things are, it's not super well written down here, but we could also link to this. Yeah, and so the args.next directory, I'm not sure if I have an example here.
I think the fact that
Do
you have
not.
to understand it actually sort of raises a point that I make in the main discussion of the PR here,
Oh yeah.
which is that it's perhaps too specific and it needs, you need to understand it, but it's not fully general. So instead of doing an args.nix, we could have a file that allows you to define any attribute, whether that's call package or whatever, which is something that we won't ever have to further generalize, right? Because that's the risk here.
Yeah.
These sort of intermediate non-abstractions, like args, which are quite specific and you have to use them in a certain way.
Yeah. I'm
Immediately like easy to understand. Whereas I think the line of code that I wrote there, basically everyone knows what's going on, right?
Yeah, so this would be like a full, like using this, we can probably deprecate the entire alt packages.nix file, right?
It would be powerful enough for that. Whether we want to do it, that's another discussion, I guess. But
Which is that the thing in the PR or just the thing Robert just said now?
This is the thing here where I'm screen sharing.
The
This
fourfold
comment here.
generality. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's certainly a change in direction. I'm not 100% sure about this. We also have David here who commented some other kind of proposal. I think that's too specific though and too restricted as Robert points out here. I don't think we need to discuss that.
I
I'm not getting.
I kind of
this,
feel
guys.
like the original plan of just putting on this stuff was not bad.
Yeah. I'm like, I think we talked about punting on this for a reason.
what was the reason?
Because there's not like a great. I guess like it's just a whole other can of worms to open up, and like not that we won't figure it out, but
Well, why is that? What
Let me put it a slightly different way. A sort of a big idea behind all of this is we're trying to show that Nix packages can be more structured. And so by starting with the simplest case, we can impose the most structure. And then we want to handle more cases, but we can think, do we want to handle that by relaxing the structure or by having sort of a wedding cake of more and less lockdown things? But I think just sort of get that initial tempo up, it's really good to be like, just how structured can we be while still not, reducing the scope to a tiny minority of packages?
Yeah, it's definitely a trade-off. I agree with that. And personally, I would rather make the trade-off in the direction of having a clear contributing experience rather than being very fundamental about the thing that we do.
that makes sense. I think one thing that might help me is if I saw an example. Like I think that might be what's hanging me up. Like if I saw like a directory that did this, I think I might understand it more.
So like we would have so like the package fund.nix file that would look, of course, like stdinf and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the args.nix file, which is what we thought of last time, where you could do this, like packages, and then I don't know, with GUI or
Standard env is standard env no TT. Okay.
oh yeah,
Something
like this. And then I guess this what did you call it? Packages etcher. Probably should be package etcher. package
No,
value or
it
something like
ends
that.
up in packages, so that's why I added PS. But I don't really care much.
And so this would be the full call, the call package. Then I guess package fun.next, or it doesn't have to be that. And then you could do
Well, we would
STNP.
we would want it to do that. That would be the convention.
The convention would be to use package fun here.
Yeah. We still come up with like guidelines and conventions, right? So,
Yeah, I guess. I guess with that, it's like people don't have to actually use that. It's whereas if we have a like this is the entry point here, then it's clear that you need that file and that's the file that is being used.
Well,
Whereas
actually, default
what I was saying earlier,
the PKG's adder, we can turn it into a default.next.
Yeah. And so I think kind of like the thing I was trying to highlight is like, in what way is this different from a default.nix file? And I think I do understand like the variant. I mean, I understand the problem trying to be solved with variants, but I'm trying to see, I suppose, the difference between the package adder and the args file.
so args is would only be that part here. So like these. So originally we only wanted this. Then we said, okay, because sometimes you do need to provide like an argument that's not an empty attribute set. Let's add an args.next file. This way, the kind of call package call, like this is the first argument and this is the second argument to it. But then might as well generalize it a bit more.
So when I'm thinking punt, I'm also thinking the first version is not about trying to get the trade-off right at all. It's just about trying to demonstrate the menu of options. So the language could be very clear, like we don't know quite what we want. We just kind of want to see both sides. But then to argue more personally and not for the RFC, this stuff doesn't even strike me as per package. What arguments you apply is fundamentally on how all the packages fit together. It's a holistic thing. I don't really think it makes sense to do it per package because these are not per package choices. Sometimes it's like I need a version of a package, and then we get to the whole express the version bounds thing. But in general, it's not. It's about the context of putting things together. It's not about the package in isolation. So a free form thing here just feels like we're getting the separation of concerns wrong to me.
I think we should definitely pick which ones of these files we want to support. And I think my preference would be either between PKG's adder.next plus PKG fun.next or the bottom default.next with a PKG fun.next.
Yeah, the default.nix one makes the most sense. Like in my head, I think that last default.nix is kind of how I imagined all this was going to look.
I thought the default Nix was going to pick it out by attribute name. It was just going to be like packages dot the name of the thing, which is ugly, but it does sort of make clear that this is like depends on other.
Default.nexes are kind of weird because they have a dependency on something outside of them,
right?
Which
but I think
which doesn't really work well in like flakes or
Well, and I thought that the default.nix was
flake, right?
Yeah, well, and but I thought that like the default.nix would be kind of like the place where you're putting that stuff that was not isolated, like. So if I wanted to, I guess like an issue we have now is like, let's say I wanted to build Python in isolation, I do have to like go, to the outer and like evaluate all of Nix packages, where having the like inline one, I could run like Nix build in the single Python directory, and maybe it points, it auto calls and like goes and pulls packages and kind of magically fills in my stuff with like fallback attributes. Where moving the PKG fun and I mean, even I'm not like against the args file or anything like that, but like having them separated kind of gives you the best of both, so you can build them individually or in isolation. And so yeah, with that in mind, I think like the last one is like kind of what I had imagined. I think what I'm not seeing how the args and package adders are different from the default .nix. Not saying that they're a bad idea. It's not clicking for me yet.
I'm also just a little confused. Do we need any of these files? Like, does the generated all package.nix thing refer to them, or does it just refer to the package fund directly?
Well, well, in this case, the generate. Okay. If we have a default Nix, we just import that. Well, actually, no. Probably that shouldn't happen. Actually.
Well, I thought that. Well, I thought we definitely have the package fund.nix no matter what, and then we have the others. Maybe
that was the idea. Yeah.
So I'm fine to have none of the others. Just have the package fund.
Well, yeah.
So I think if you really want to have fun with packages, sorry for the fun.
Well, the package fund allows you to create all the other ones if necessary.
I'm not trying to be funny, actually. The default .nix, it does allow us to later on innovate with the way we produce packages, right? Because that's another topic that we want to explore in the future. Just having, for example, modular packages, multi-system based, whatever, and those will not use call package.
Well, when we do the experiment, we can add a file. We don't have to.
Yeah, so I don't like the idea of having to scan for like 5 files in order to determine what's going to happen. I think that's a performance risk. And it sort of steepens not steepens, but extends the learning curve.
Well, but it is.
Between those files will not be obvious.
On the flip side, if you have a default .nix, it may seem like you can do anything, and the rules that the default .nix has to implement a certain policy could be very unclear. Because that's what it sounds like. We have a sort of copy paste default .nix to all the things that would, check all the stuff, but that's sort of non-obvious at first sight.
Yeah, so I guess the default .nix, we could make it optional and just invoke package fun if the default .nix would be trivial otherwise. But I do like that it's really explicit and self-explanatory, and it allows for innovation in the future without having to do even more explaining.
Well, I thought part of the point of doing this was that we have kind of more statically available information. Because like if we have everything in like a default .nix, and I mean in the future we might also want like a default .nix, I mean like a Flake that also builds the Nixos modules and Hydra jobs and stuff like that, which is kind of the opposite of having standard files which have some standard structure. We can
right. So we could, instead of calling it default .nix, we could call it Pkgs adder, Pkg adder, something that isn't default .nix, but still has the same semantics as what I suggested for the default .nix.
Right. I'm not a huge fan of this. It like introduces a lot of extra concerns. Like also, is it still a package at that point? Like because you could expose multiple packages at that point. You could use call packages. You could use that for fetch from GitHub and it not even being a package. You could use it for library functions as well. It like introduces a whole bunch more scope that we might have to deal with. Whereas just a package fun and maybe an args
with it, or are contributors going to have to deal with us. I think we should
Well,
enable contributors to have a simple contributing experience rather than us imposing arbitrary rules on them.
Yeah, but I think like package fun and maybe arcs as well, because there are some cases where that's needed, does cover like probably like 90%. And that's already really good. Like in 90% of cases when someone wants to contribute, I think so.
Like when, so, okay, so I shouldn't be making analogies, but is it a good architecture if it doesn't encompass the use cases? I don't think it is. That's an incomplete architecture. That's just, you know, you're building a shed next to the building, and I'm sure 90% of activities you do in the main building you can do in the shed, but
I feel like it's
there's a reason why it's
it's
a building and not a shed.
I mean, I get what you're saying, Robert, that there is something very icky about trying to weasel one's way out of the real problem. And you can get, really backwards designs just sort of covering your ears. And I'm only going to focus on the easy stuff. But I don't think this is one of those cases. It doesn't feel like it to me. The code has to be written and read, and I think it's the point here is with the standard structure is not that it's always easy to fit things in the standard structure. It isn't, and then you have to use the other one. But on the flip side, if you're consuming these things, it's really locked down. It's really clear what you're seeing. There's strict enforcement of a strict pattern. I absolutely, we can't declare like mission accomplished until there isn't, 5, 10, 20% of other stuff. Like we're not done until everything fits the pattern. And only at that point can we really declare it like a real pattern. But as a like preliminary pattern, I think it's fine. I guess a lot of things that would slip outside of this, I ultimately want to handle in a very different way. Like I would want, there's been some discussion lately of splicing being terrible, which is, I want to be able to express dependencies in a much higher level way than we do today. And if we do things like that, then we chip away at this stuff. So it's not like we'll have to do a default .NEX eventually. There's other radically different things. But I think this is a good starting point that's not too radical and not too useless.
What I would want to ask is, what is the invariant that the consumer of all this can expect?
Well, there is only one consumer, and that's all packages, or well, the autocode packages.
Well, it's
when you have the default .NEX or PKG adder.NEX, the only consumer is read there. Right?
Right, but then
and the people contributing, right?
Well,
they're not supposed to depend on this, right? It's not a public interface.
So this would be the package. Well, contributors have
true, but
the file is never the public interface, right? So it doesn't really matter what's inside the unit directory, except for when you're editing stuff. And for that, we have conventions.
It's not officially in scope, but I do think if we really get this right, people will want to structure their downstream repos using the same units convention that Nixpkgs does.
We did say that should be out of scope, though. Like we should be able to modify the Nixpkgs structure, and maybe we should be more clear about that it is only internal and that changes will happen. So
it's definitely. I mean, it definitely. You should not rely on it today because changes will happen, but it is also a goal that we eventually arrive at a really good idiom that maybe is ripe for stabilization.
Yeah. At some point, I do hope we can make that like a standard.
Yeah, having
mean-
everything in there kind of treated the same way with and minimizing the cases. Like trying to minimize the number
Yeah.
of cases is nice here. So
Yes, I guess that, I mean, yeah, if you look at a default.next like this or a package attribute, it's, yeah, that would be kind of functionality that if this file exists, then do that. Otherwise, look at do this call automatically, which is kind of, it's some behavior that that's kind of implicit and you can't really expect, you can't really easily know what happens. Ideally, I think at some point we should have like all these unit directories only have or every file in a unit directory is a standard. I would like this.
yeah,
What about it's either standard or it's private?
Yeah, I would say we'd have even a standard for private files then.
Sure.
Yeah, you could have a directory called private, and that has all like
Yeah.
this or whatnot. Maybe we'd have a directory for things like that.
Yeah, and so from in that kind of end state, we should not have files that are only read in certain cases. In that case, if a file is there, it is being read and checked and whatever. And I guess, I mean, here I guess we could do that too. Something like if you have the package address specified. Well, no, it doesn't make sense for the package fund then to not exist.
Yeah, there's like weird. There's interactions there, right? Like, I think by keeping it simple and just being able to say, look, this directory, you do a recursive read dir, and everything gets call packaged. It just that has a simplicity to it that's perhaps not as flexible and like convenient for like the variant situation. But I mean, we're trying to minimize the most common case.
I think it's funny that an hour ago we were discussing in the Nix team about the dependency injection that happens in Flakes. And we just we actually want to simplify it and move more towards the default of Nix situation, which just you can do anything and decide your own injection. And now we're deciding the opposite. I think that's kind of funny.
Well.
So
I was.
The question is simple for who? So I think it's simple if there's not a lot to learn. The files describe themselves, and you have full flexibility, and you don't have to consider the rules that are set by some architecture team. That would be simple.
For me, I don't feel like we're deciding the opposite. For me, like there should be a strong separation between who's declaring what you need, like individual packages declare what they need, and the outside thing that puts it together injects the dependencies. And so it's actually like it's super related. And like ultimately we want like a reusable thing which says the requirements it imposes on its inputs, but does not say what those inputs should be. And something else plugs things in satisfying those requirements.
A concern is if inside of one of those there's someone else's call package is called, that means rescoping it becomes far more intrusive.
Right. Yeah, you can invoke another thing. You just take a print.
Rescoping in what sense?
So if you want to, let's say I don't want to use the call package, like that's provided. then I would suspect something like using my own or having something that's already been make scoped or new scoped
Mhm.
now means I have to kind of you have to kind of like dig into that. And I don't know if that's even if you can. Again, it hides the original function, right? Because you're hiding the original. The original function is hidden in a. I can't access the original function.
Yeah, but
Is what
that was already the point of our rules, right? That the original function is hidden because we are not allowed to peek into the unit directories, and that from that it follows that you cannot directly access the function. So you'd have to use .override.
Ah, okay, yeah. So maybe that's my. Then maybe I missed that portion. I would want. I do want. So then it is very likely then I'll just start going around doing read dir myself and getting the original functions because overrides always tend to either miss things or have other things hidden in lets.
Yeah.
I would want to access the original package fun.
Yeah, I think .override is bad.
Yeah. The variations of it as well.
We want to get to a world where we don't like put together a package set, then be like, whoops, I actually didn't want that. Take it apart and re-put it back together. You should have the pieces, and then you should put them together just once in the right way. That should be more performant and more elegant.
For this though, I mean, we could expose the unit directories, but as an unstable interface. Like we could say it's internal, like underscore that or something, and then people can depend on it, but have to expect breakages. I feel like we could do that for use cases where you really want the original function for some reason.
Right. I mean, yeah. There's everything I sent wasn't supposed to be like, let's rush to stabilize it. No, it's like we have building blocks that want to be combined yet, but we're very strict that like we haven't said quite how to do that in a stable way. So your mouth should water, but you shouldn't actually take a bite unless you want to do unstable things.
Yeah, I do want to about this proposal. It is very general, but it doesn't really solve any problems. It just kind of moves the problems we already have.
It solves the problem of contributors not knowing what to do about their package.
Yeah, that problem it does solve. I don't think it's worth I don't think it's worth it though, because we do kind of introduce some special casing in the structure, and it makes it harder to know what the individual files do.
It actually removes special casing because you're removing a restriction, right? We want a simple design. Right?
Well, there's
simple design.
With this, there's no special case
to because there's less to learn. There's less arbitrary stuff that you have to care about.
I think we do want people to kind of learn the structure, though. I think it's okay. Like,
of course.
Yeah.
We're establishing the Nixpkg fun convention.
Yeah.
We can do both things. It's very easy to figure out which packages follow the convention and which ones don't. Because you just have to look at what's inside the directory.
I still think it's. I'm not a huge fan of doing this. Something like this, something as generic as this.
I mean, every time when I look at overrides today, the overrides of adjacent packages in all packages.nix are often super informative. There's often like we need to override a bunch of things in a similar way for interrelated reasons. Like imagine all the I've got some like Clang variation and some GCC variation of the same sort. and they're right next to each other, and it's like, oh, I see the pattern now. If that's in the Clang and the GCC things, totally different files, totally different directories, the relationship between those two overrides or special attributes is going to be lost.
Yeah, I would like to group attributes together, but I think for technical reasons we're not doing it, because we don't want to read an arbitrary amount of files just to construct the PKGs after step.
I think that's just a temporary. Well, we would like to do some restructuring that kind of moves versions into the same attribute or something like that, and variants. But I'm not sure if that's what you mean though, John. Like, do you mean like, let's say Python 2 and Python 3, where you want to use Python 3 for a package, and that this kind of pattern of using Python 3 occurs in all over the place in all packages.mix?
Well,
and
yeah. So, sorry. So like that one, I think should be expressed where, like, we want to put version bounds in the inputs, because that is a local concern. That's just my package needs a new enough Python, and so we'll someday expand package fun to have that sort of thing. This is more like some expression problem thing where, like, I don't know, I have like 4 Fortran packages and 4 Fortran compilers, and I want to do all the combinations. It doesn't really make sense per compiler or per Fortran package. That's a more top level thing.
I mean, I feel like all of the overrides we have in all packages are an indication of something we probably don't want in the end. I mean, even the packages functions themselves are something we probably don't want in the end, because it's hard to express dependencies and so on.
Right. Yeah, it's either an awkward way because we don't have version bounds, or it's an awkward expression problem thing. Either way, it's bad.
Yeah. I'm not sure where to continue. Like, as we haven't really reached consensus on this, on what we want here. I do not like extending the scope of this RFC this much this late. And we have been discussing only this file for like a long time now, and we seem to have a pretty good agreement on that. I think just extending the args.next file is a bit ambitious. It's almost fine in my opinion, since it's somewhat restricted, but then again, you can do a lot of things in it, and it is kind of a new thing, and people aren't used to it. So I'm not even sure about this, but this feels like a stretch to me.
I think the whole time-based argument is bogus. Sorry. If you run into a problem, which we did, because the contributor experience was going to be bad, that was a real problem. So we should treat it as a real problem.
I mean, how?
I don't really care that much whether it's going to be args.nix or PKG adder.nix or default.nix, as long as we decide something that so that people can maintaining Nix packages, which is
Robert, you're really the thing you're worried about is this whole, like, you start trying to do a unit file and then it's like, actually this doesn't fit, and now I would have to start over in this different way. You think that's like the bad thing you're trying to avoid?
Yeah, that thing, and having to go back and forth if you're doing overrides for maintenance purposes, whatever that might be. Sometimes you need to do overrides. call packages.
Oh, let me get that. Let me get that down. I think there might be another way to solve that problem that maybe is less controversial.
I wrote like a little example below that I think shows the problem that Robert's talking about, which was, so I have like a simple package, but I want to make a variant of it. It's unclear whether I'm supposed to make the variant as a default.nix file with the automatic calling. I mean, basically what you have is I modified a single arg from the original. And it's unclear, am I supposed to make an entirely separate default.nix? Do I have to clone the original the original package fun to represent like the new arg? In this case, there's a difference of like one argument was extended and I changed the name. So the package fun itself would be identical, but you've got like, it's unclear how to represent the separate arg set,
So you wouldn't do that in a unit directory because it's not a call package
Oh, and you could
pattern.
You could change that to be call package or like that. Oh, this one then it's an override, right?
Yeah, it's an override.
And so I was using an override in this case because I was just thinking like, oh, it's unclear how I'm supposed to refer to that other package fun. But you're right. I guess we could just use call package. I feel kind of goofy now that you've pointed that out. Yeah, you could just use call package and change the args that you pass to it. That would make more sense. Yeah.
So maybe there's two things. There's like, can the package conform to the unit rules? Is it a bona fide unit? And can we auto call it without arguments? Maybe those should be different things. Maybe there should be like bona fide units and we just auto call them. Bona fide units that we call manually in an unstable way to override arguments and things. And then like everything else, which is things that they either need, then everything else would be, we can't even structure as a unit. It's too weird. And presumably also we probably need to call it in a funny way.
Yeah, I think we could go back to just lifting the restriction and allowing units, PKG funds to be called from all packages.nix. And then we don't have to go into args.nix, default.nix, PKG attr.nix. We just leave those out and just allow call package from all packages.nix to unit PKG fund.
Yeah,
I'll call it for me.
Yeah, actually in the call package wouldn't cover the variant below because I don't have a way to refer to the other package fund without ... If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that way, both args.nix and default.nix are insufficient still.
Does that? I think that will help isolate where technical debt lives, and so paying it down is a bit more obvious, right? In other words, if these special exceptions and overrides and changes are going to be in the all packages, then it's clear that that's where it lives, and that generally removing it from there is a good thing, right? Because it means that we don't need that anymore. We don't need this hack, or we don't need this override, and the original unit still applies. So it's kind of clear the direction of time or the direction of entropy is kind of a bit more clear.
Well, and I guess like in the variant I wrote below, like this is a case where it's almost like you wouldn't like I wouldn't even call this debt. It's like it's like don't repeat yourself. Like you're recycling an existing build with a different arg set. Where
it's not. It doesn't even have to be a different build. It could be just a single one where you want, like the Python 3 example is just you want a better interface for overriding.
Mm-hmm.
But can I just Tommy, the kind of technical debt, you mean that the passing arguments in the all packages.nix that's something we don't want in the end. And so kind of only moving the cases where we don't have arguments to the unit directories kind of makes sure that we don't kind of bring along technical depth into the kind of new way.
Yes.
Is that the idea?
Yes. It's kind of like a firewall between those two worlds.
Yeah, I do like that idea a lot.
I mean, I do almost think of what we're doing as like some sort of Kanban board thing where we have different buckets of different more or less conforming packages, and you know, contract packages moving from, you know, different buckets to other buckets to see how things are going. It's a much nicer bird's eye view than just having to like read through all packages and look for weird stuff.
Alex, when you talked about you couldn't name your other package fun. You want to refer to it, right?
Well, yeah. So let's say, in this example, there's a package that's like basically all it does is symlink hello and cowsay into a folder. It does that using like this path argument that you pass in. And so in that sense, it's actually kind of abstract. It's basically link farm. So you have the regular default.nix that does hello and cowsay. The default.nix exists to like do your auto calling. And then it calls the package fun, but then says, okay, hey, I want to have a variant that is like uses the same package fun, the same body, but I'm calling it with a different argument. So in this case, since I can't use I don't want to use ... what I could do is say, no, I want the original as an arg, and then I call override to get what I want. So that was like one way of dealing with it. But I think I guess the reason I put this here was I'm trying to understand, like, Robert, is this the issue you're trying to sort out, or is this kind of like is this an accurate example of what we're talking about?
It's one of the examples, right? It's it's part of the more general problem of like how do contributors use the unit directory in real life.
Yeah. So in this one, it's like,
so in this
case, you wouldn't want to. I mean, you could duplicate the package fun and put it in another directory,
but you shouldn't have to.
So if you want to don't repeat yourself,
So here's what I would imagine in this case. Right. The problem here is you're referring to packages.hello and cowsay. Right. And then you're going to have to override it. Right. What if you simply just asked for the exact thing that you want? What you're looking for is the function itself, the package fun for hello and cowsay.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So what if you just said package fun dot hello cowsay or unit dot hello and cowsay? In other words, you're not asking for the instantiated package that you then override.
I want the function.
You just give me the function.
Yep, exactly.
And so there is a place where you can say, from all the package funds I have available, or from all of my units, give me dot hello and cowsay, and it has a name. And because it has a name, I can refer to it. And now I can do whatever I want with it because, well, it's the most general object we have, which is just the function.
Tom, you cracked the case, buddy. That solves this problem for me, at least.
Well, because when hello starts to use the Git version of hello, and it won't have /configure anymore, then you have to depend on autoconf and automate. Alex, do you really want to care about that stuff? Whether or not it needs automate dependency?
Wait,
I don't think you do, right?
Wait, I didn't fully get that.
What Robert's saying is, if you like the full, in all its glory package fun is gonna expose other dependencies that you probably don't care about, and then you have to add those dependencies to yourself. So you have this sort of manual ADA expansion problem where I have to know all the things my dependencies need so I can call them. I'm glad, I've long had this thing where what we really need for Nix packages is a logic programming thing, which is I like I don't want to derail too much, but like this is the tension. Like most of the time we can do this sort of first order thing where you say, just give me my things called. And then sometimes we get in these sort of thorny higher order cases where it's like I want to set some of my arguments, but not all of them. And that's the meat of the issue. It's the problem. I love it. It's gonna be with us for a while. I think we'll eventually get there, but it's gonna take like 5 years. So
And just for the record, I do think the override pattern that I did there is not the worst thing in the world. Like, just to highlight. I know like this is an annoying problem, but like what we've got there with the overrides and like the override adders, it's not perfect, but like it's pretty good. I'm saying we shouldn't feel
Is
too
the
terrible.
problem?
I don't think we have to scope this in for now because we're actually going towards the end of our 1 hour time slot, and we can spend like a whole day exploring how we want to do dependency injection in Nixpkgs. But I think it would be more productive to decide on like a solution for the current problem, which is the contributor experience and the restriction. And I think we almost got a solution. Right.
I mean, that's
right
one of
before
these.
we-
It's your
No, those were the complicated solutions. Right.
the easy solution is.
Only removing the restriction for all packages. Just allow all packages to call package into unit directory.
Right. Oh yeah, wrote this down earlier. Allow all packages to call into. Well, this then might cause problems where people don't, like you might have a unit directory, but it doesn't get applied correctly because there's a duplicate call in all packages as well,
yeah, I think we need like
which
an auto unit
overrides
and then-
it.
So how would
And,
that
Like
be?
you might have a packages unit foo and a foo equals call package some other dir, and nobody would realize that. And I feel like that would be a problem for contributing because, especially with merges and PR rebases and so on. This is why I wanted like one of the criteria to be that we have a CI check that makes sure this doesn't occur.
Okay.
So
I think
but
we
yeah,
can
it
have-
is.
We can have a CI check for that.
Could
It's
we-
a matter of making call package return extra attribute.
I'm not sure if that's
Oh yeah.
Easily
It
solvable.
can save the path to the call, put that on the result, and that'll allow us to easily check
so unit directory and a call
the-
package.
that the calls make sense.
And so I guess we could do a CI check. Could do CI check to make sure it's a call package unit dir, not another dir.
What do you think the
That could
idea I
work.
put above?
Oh, I am not getting any audio. Sorry.
Oh, no one can hear me?
We can
I
hear
can
you
hear
now.
Oh, okay. Oh, I just typed it. We could have just one directory of the units you auto call and another one of the ones you manually call, and then there would be disjoint. There wouldn't be like all packages overrides the automatic stuff, and then we could do a stronger CI check.
Oh, Infinite is gone. That's unfortunate. I think that sounded good, what you said, John. But how do you know whether a unit is supposed to be... Oh, I think I get it. When you first scan all the unit directories, then you get a list of which ones are... which attributes are supposed to be unit calls. and then you can check that they're actually call package calls that called the right unit. Right?
I will also just like it's different directories. I'll wait for Sylvan's mic to get fixed. Well, so I was thinking, Robert, they would just be in different places. So the auto calling will just not pick up any of the manual units. So if you have a weird unit, you put it in one place, and you have a regular unit, you put it in the other place. I suppose
that doesn't really solve the problem of having to go back and forth between the two conventions, right? What I want to achieve is that if a package suddenly needs an override, that it's not a move, not a file move. It's just adding a line in all packages.
Well, then maybe then I would put it in the units. Have some sort of maybe that's what you were saying. Just mark in the unit itself, should I be auto called or not, and the thingy will respect it.
I think that sounds a lot like args. When you're putting something in the unit directory, you tell it to do, well, basically do a call package with args, right?
No, well, it's not saying how it's not saying how to call package it. It's saying whether.
Right, like a marker file. Allow this to be call packaged from all packages, is what it says.
Well, or maybe everything can be call packaged. The question is, should it be auto packaged? If you're a works out of the box unit, you can be all packages. If you're a not works out of the box unit, then you should be skipped by the auto calling.
Yeah, I think that the skipping is implicit and it's completely okay, because in our layering, we start with like the bootstrapping stuff, then we have the auto called packages, and on top of that we have all packages. So if you need to override a dependency, you can add a line to all packages, and it'll just override the thing that would otherwise be coming from auto-called packages. Right? There's not really a problem there.
I mean, it works. I was sort of enamored with the disjointness, but you're right. You don't strictly need it. It's a matter of preference.
Yeah, if you want to figure out which one of the units are works out of the box or have an override, you could just scan all packages.nix for those unit file names.
Oh, so you think it should do like a adder keys and all packages.nix, and it could just skip anything mentioned in there. So, or just when you do the union, something will override it. It's fine.
The read there and auto calling layer in the overlays, it doesn't need to care, because it comes before the all packages.nix. So.
Oh yeah. So just unconditional read everything, and then things may or may not be overridden.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you're back now, Sylvan, but then what does the CI check do in that case? Or are you saying no CI check?
I just quickly, I'm going to stop the recording because it's going to